bring that up to the 13.65, it is basically 26.362 million.
And as those of us around this table know, but just to make sure everybody else is, there's not a line item in the budget for that. That would be an expense if it is put on the employer's portion that the agency would have to absorb in their budgets.
That is correct.
And you referenced the unfunded liability. It's been tossed around by some that there's around, I'm maybe using round numbers, of 35% unfunded actuarial liability. Can you speak to that?
Yes, if you look at pages 30 and 31, and those of us in the pension industry like to say that we pre-funded 64% versus that we're unfunded a portion, because what we really have done and what it is important it needs to know is that PERS is not a pay-as-you-go system. It's not like Social Security. We have over $20 billion, almost $21 billion in assets that have been accumulated to pay not only the benefits that are due today, but the benefits that are due many, many years into the future. So I would say that, and you're right, we aren't funded as well as we should be. We're at basically 64%. The bogey is probably at least 80%. In 1990, at the end of 1998, when we were funded at 85%, and the amortization period was 9.8 years. The benefit increases that were passed by the legislature in 1999 cost an estimated more than 10% of payroll, and would have extended that mortgage period by more than 40 years. In recognition of the fact that you couldn't extend the amortization period by that length of time, nor did the legislature at that time want to increase the contribution rate because of the impact of the budget. Those increases were phased in over time. Unfortunately, because there were no contributions paid on that, and we have had market losses, that's where we find ourselves today. And in fact, there was a peer report to the legislature in 1998 cautioning the legislature about increasing benefits by extending the amortization period. And in fact, just to quote a little bit from that report, it says that we believe the overemphasis of the amortization period of the unfunded accrued liability has produced a climate in which extension of the amortization period is viewed by some as currency, which may be used to purchase additional benefits. Excuse me, a little dry. To purchase additional benefits in a painless manner. It is almost analogous to buying benefits on credit. As anyone knows, too much credit can be a dangerous thing. To maintain the integrity of the system, we recommend that any benefit increases be purchased wholly or partly by increases in contribution rates. That was not done.
And just to be clear, I was in college in 1998, so
that was not directed at anyone. It's just it's the analogy of buying benefits on credit, basically, which is what was done in 1999. And unfortunately, that has come back, and it has put us in the funded status that we're in.
And I think that brings up a good point, in that I don't think, I'll speak for me, I'm not trying to blame anybody. I'm not trying to blame the legislature for 1998 or 1999. I'm not trying to blame the PERS board. I think we are where we find ourselves, but for you to come to this committee and responsibly say that we're going to have to increase the percentage of contribution, and also say that we are looking at a 35% unfunded actuarial liability is justifiable concern from the system to be looked at. Not from a standpoint of trying to place any blame on anybody, but just to make sure that the system is sound for those who are going to participate in the future. And so I echo Senator Burgess' sentiment. And Thank you, Governor.
All right, we have a couple more questions. I will tell you, education is probably waiting. We have them scheduled for 10:30. A lot of good information. Senator Hughes.
Thank you. I know you're trying to draw us to a close, but hopefully after this discussion, we can put to rest the fear mongering over the 13th check, because there seems to be universal agreement with this body, with your board, and with the recommendation of the committee that is at work, that there's no sentiment to make any changes to that. Would you agree to that?
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else feel better?
The legislature,
Well, I think we ought to stand another
the legislature has made a number of statutory changes per the board's recommendations, and still there are concerns that Senator Davis just articulated. When we talk about employer contributions, we got to remember in this instance that it comes from the budgets, it comes from taxpayer dollars. It's not the private sector doing this. It's tax dollars that are provided for these benefits on employer contributions. Do you know of any agencies that have projected or built this into their budget request as far as anticipating having to increase that match in their budget?
I'm not aware of what any agencies have done as it relates to their budget. I do know that we have provided information about the fact that the rates may increase. We generally send employer updates that project those rates that they may increase. But I'm not aware of whether or not they have been included in the budgets.
All right, one final question. As it stands today, if no changes are made to the PERS system, as it stands today, is it sustainable for the future?
I think you heard me say earlier that, in my opinion, the current plan is sustainable. We have over almost $21 billion in assets to pay benefits. It's going to take some time, and there is going to have to be a commitment to fund the contribution rate increase. Now, I can also say that if the contribution rate increase is not funded, that the impact of that doesn't mean that the plan is not sustainable. What the impact of that means is that rather than being able to pay it off, that unfunded accrued liability over 30 years, that mortgage period, if you will extend to 35 or 40 years, which is not an acceptable funding period by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board at this time, which could mean that it would negatively impact the state's bond ratings, or all employers who issue bonds that are covered by PERS, and would have another impact. One of the things that the rating agencies look at is whether or not the employer is funding the annual required contribution. The annual required contribution is the contribution rate that is calculated by the actuary that will ensure that the liabilities are paid off within the prescribed period, i.e. 30 years.
So the short answer is no. Without following the actuary's recommendation, it is not sustainable. Is that what you're saying?
No, sir, that is not what I'm saying.
Well, you did a lot of double talk there. And you said it's sustainable, and then you said, but you got to follow that actuary's recommendation and increase the employer contribution. Now, which is it? Is it sustainable as it stands today, or do changes need to be made?
It is sustainable, in my opinion, as it stands today. Now, with no changes. What I said is if you choose to fund it over a period longer than 30 years, it could have a negative impact on the state's bond rating. That does not make the plan unsustainable.
But it is conceivable that 30 years and beyond is going to be part of this whole calculation and consideration, right? It's not going to stop at 30 years.
In funding a retirement plan, ideally, and if you were starting at the beginning, you would fund a plan through the normal cost. You would pay for it on a year-to-year basis. You would have actuarial gains and losses based on experience being different than what you expected. But you would be able to absorb those. And one of the things that we do is we do an actuarial experience study every 2 years, which is probably more aggressive than most systems do, to ensure that whatever assumptions we're using are accurate and are reflected in the cost of providing the benefit. What happens, and what did happen, is benefit increases were given. in 1999 that I would argue probably weren't sustainable at the time, and not through, we bought benefits on credit. And so the only way that you're going to change any of that would be, it's kind of like we have, basically the underlying normal cost is a home mortgage and the house. In 1999, we took out a home equity line of credit, and over the next 4 years, we added we put in an addition, we put in a swimming pool, we did all this. We today could sell the home and pay off the mortgage. However, we still have to pay that home equity loan, and that's where we are today. So the plan itself, in my opinion, is sustainable. Do we have debt we've got to pay off? We definitely do.
Thank you. Representative Brown.
I'll be very brief. I did want to respond to something that Senator Kirby said. Speaking for myself, I don't question the commission. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a commission. I personally know all, but I think one of the commissioners, they're all honorable people. I think they have nothing but the best of intent in what they're doing. I don't really know why it's necessary. The governor thought it was necessary. We've got a board that does this. The state treasurer serves on that board. To the best of my knowledge, the state treasurer has never expressed his concern about the sustainability, viability of the program, and the honor, integrity, ability of the people on that board. As far as the 13th check goes, I'll remind you that we did have legislation introduced by current Congressman Stephen Palazzo that would have reduced the 13th check. So there are concerns about the 13th check. I will also point out that in many other states there are attacks on and I'll call them attacks on public employees and on benefits of public employees, and there have been changes. And the attacks are concentrated. They're all over the board. Some have made changes, some have not. But I think employees do have a right to be concerned about this. This is their livelihood. You've heard that they don't get much in terms of benefits, average of $19,000 retirement benefits. Some of them get $7,000 retirement benefits, and this is all they have to live on, and they have every right to be concerned. I don't think it's panic. I don't think it's fear-mongering. They look at what's going on in other states. They look at a bill being introduced that would have reduced the benefits, and they have every right to be concerned. Not by this body, but they have right to be concerned about it.
Thank you, Preston. I think you have one. We'll let you wrap that up if you have a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. I'm sort of in a bind on this. I got appointed to the commission by the governor, and I got appointed to the PERS board as a non-voting member by the speaker. So I've heard a lot about PERS over the past 4 years. And I want to tell you, I appreciate the job that all of you do. And I appreciate the PERS board, because they ask some tough questions. And I've been there when they actually will fire somebody. So it's serious business, and I know it is, and we all know it is, because all the people are concerned about this. Anytime you bring something like this up, it causes great concern. And I'm also a Baptist, and sometimes we got too many committees in our church. But I'm not saying that this committee didn't need to take a look at things. But your organization and your agency has always been where you didn't mind somebody taking a look. All of us are in this together. You're the arm of the state to the retirees, and you better believe it's serious business with everybody. So I hope we can get it all resolved. And I missed the first meeting to the commission, the organizational meeting to the commission. The next meeting I did, I was under the impression that everything was on the table. Not to hurt, not to point, to cut out or what, but everything was on the table to be looked at. My understanding so far, we're going to look at everything. But also, Mr. Slocum said, and I speak of him, he said that there may not be a recommendation. There might not be. So with that, that's all I got to say. I don't think.
From a budget standpoint, that would be
Purely.
delightful.
Would it be out of kilter to ask our staff to do a thorough research to see if any public monies are being expended to pay for this study?
I'm sorry. I was talking to Chairman String.
None. It's federal money. Well, that's taxpayer money. It's discretionary money, stimulus money. Can we get a report of how much is being expended? Somebody's got to account for that, if it is federal money.
The board members aren't being paid any.
Yeah, well, I'm not suggesting. I'd just like to know. $250, and that's paying consultants and so forth. That's what you do. Yeah. Well, I still have to request
Chairman String
to get that.
And then we're going to let Ms. Robinson go back and do her good work. Take care of our.
We have worked hard to try to get a handle on these contract employees, and I have a list of ones that have retired and are contracting with state agencies. Would y'all pass that down?
All right. Thank you very much. Chairman Flack, wrap this up.
Yeah, Governor, and members of the committee, I think it's incumbent on us and back, I think it's our responsibility to relieve the Republic and certainly those retirees of any doubt about us recommending anything to do with the 13 check. Now, having said that, I think the word ought to be bond. I would rather us, the committee, I was going to circulate a letter asking every member of the committee to sign saying that we agree with Mr. Stokes, his own words, when he said that the 13 check, the tax cost lift check, and we codify that. But at some point, Lieutenant Governor, I hope we will put it to a vote. You want to make a motion?
That was going to be my suggestion. That
Recognize Senator Hughes for motion.
There's no objection that we go on record as a body stating that we would not support any particular recommendation that would prohibit an individual from receiving their cost of living adjustment.
Motion has been made. Second. All those in favor of that motion, any discussion? Mr. Burke? All those in favor of that motion as stated here by Mr. Slogel and reiterated by this board that we will not affect 13 check, the code. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Let the record reflect is unanimous in this committee. Thank you. Perhaps that will help alleviate any concern. Ms. Robinson, you do a marvelous job. Thank you for your staff, particularly those members that we elect to be on that board. Thank you. Need to get some air conditioning. We're trying to cut the air off so we save money.